Hello, good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and I'm here on a very rainy St. Louis day. A little dreary, a little dark here in St. Louis right now. But hopefully we can have some fun for a few minutes here. Hanging out, talking about Stonemaier games, any topics that you want. I have some TV shows, some movies, some things like that to talk about today too. I see my coworker Susanna is here. Proofreader Brian, who's done some amazing proofreading work for us, and InDesign expert Corel is here as well on vacation. Corel, always good to see you. Corel's on vacation in the Netherlands, it sounds like. I have a hodgepodge of topics today. I have no big Stonemaier Games news. So sometimes we would do usually we would do probably a newsletter today. Today is July 3rd. But we really don't have all that much news until July 24th, when we will launch Rolling Realms Redux on our web store. So I decided we're going to kind of delay the July newsletter until July 24th. I did send out a champion newsletter today. So if you're a champion, you should have a newsletter in your inbox, either already there or incoming soon. And so I'll just talk about a variety of topics. As always, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. And today actually is game 70 of Rolling Realms Redux. So on every 10th game, at least that's the tradition so far, we play fan-designed homemade realms. So today I'll play Tiny Epic Galaxies, Connect 4, and Aquatica. These are not official Stonemaier realms. I have not played these before. I really don't even know how they work, but I did help select them with Corel and with some other nominations for these realms, and I look forward to playing them today at 3 o'clock St. Louis time. Today, tomorrow, and Friday, I'll be playing these realms. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. What else is going on here? I mentioned in the video description Inside Out 2. So I got to see Inside Out 2 recently, and it really moved me, as is expected, I think, from any Pixar film, especially one that's about emotions and beliefs and values, friendship, family, so many things that Pixar puts into this series of movies. But it moved me beyond what I thought how it would move me, even having seen the first movie. And I did a blog post about it the other day, with that paired with some quotes from a recent Roger Federer graduation speech that also really moved me and touched me. I thought he had some great insights in that speech. So that was a recent blog post just the other day. I'm curious if you all have seen Inside Out 2. And actually, let me lead with today's 2 questions of the day today. 2 questions. One is, and they're both about games. What is your favorite guilty pleasure game? This is something that someone asked me, I believe, in the YouTube comments at some point recently. And I didn't have a good answer. I wasn't sure what to say, because the question kind of insinuates that there are games that I feel a little guilty about playing or suggesting. And I really struggled to think about that. I don't have many that come to mind in that way. And so I'm curious how you think about that question. When you hear guilty pleasure games, if there are any games for you that fall into that category, how do you categorize them that way, and what games are they? I am struggling to think of any examples for me, because I like a wide variety of games. I don't feel guilty about saying I want to play this game or I hope to play this game. Yeah, I'm curious what you think about that. Let's see. So Damon J says Scythe. Why Scythe? Why is Scythe the guilty pleasure for you? And Corel says Happy Salmon. And similar question, Corel. Why? I know Happy Salmon is probably not the type of game that you normally play, but why is it a guilty pleasure game for you? Why do you feel guilty about suggesting that game to other people? Jeff says, this weekend I was picking up my son from a summer program. Yeah, that's right. And ran into another parent wearing a Stonemaier ambassador shirt. That's awesome. We had a great little conversation. What is the most unusual place you have met a fan? Most unusual place. Well, that's really neat that you had that connection. That's awesome to hear. I'm trying to think. Okay, well, so there was an odd circumstance. It happens very rarely that, it's a very niche hobby. And I am, there are many people better known than me in the hobby, and even they probably don't get recognized all that often. But there was an odd circumstance where I was playing disc golf in St. Louis, which is, if you want to run into me, playing disc golf in St. Louis is a pretty fair chance that you'll run into me playing disc golf. people weren't out there doing that. They were just playing disc golf. And I was playing disc golf at Unger disc golf courses here in St. Louis. And someone called from pretty far away. I must have been wearing a Stonemaier shirt. And they said, "Hey, Jamey." I was like, "Oh, hey." And I didn't recognize the person. I don't think it was someone that I knew from Design Day, but they recognized me. And then the odd thing was later that day on the same course, a different group of people, a different person said, "Oh, hey, are you Jamey?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, Jamey from Stonemaier Games." And so it happened twice on the same disc golf course on the same day, completely different groups of people. That was flattering and fun and obviously memorable. Yeah. Here's Carol from the Mill. Carol, I loved the conversation that you had with Garrett and Molly from the Mill and Connie recently about Charterstone. If you go over to the Mill, if you've played Charterstone and you go to the YouTube channel called the Mill, they did kind of just a chat about a game that they enjoyed of Stonemaier Games, talking about their experiences with the game, divided into spoilers and non-spoilers. And I thought it was a really, really neat conversation about the game. I appreciate you hosting that, Carol. So Joshua says about guilty pleasure games. I don't believe I have a guilty pleasure game. I have a limited time. I've limited time to play, so I play whatever the table wants to play. That's very similar to my experience too. Valerie says guilty pleasure games for me are games I know a lot of people hate, but I love. I see. So games that maybe the guilt comes from you knowing that other people aren't excited about the game, but every now and then you just want to play anyway. I get that. I probably have some games that fit into that category. Luke says, I like playing Monopoly and the iPad app. Not as much as I used to, but once in a while. I could see that. Yeah, I guess I can't say that I have gone back to Monopoly in a long time, but if I did have that inkling, that craving to do so, I would probably feel a little guilty about mentioning it out loud. I can see that. Carell explains, I feel guilty when playing Happy Statement at the board game club because it's incredibly loud and so the other players are bothered. I see, luckily only for 3 minutes. So that makes sense to me as too. When you have a loud game, especially at a game night where other people are playing quiet, heads down Euro games, and you have a loud, boisterous game, I can see that leading to a little bit of guilt. I'm going to make notes about these because these are great examples about why you might feel a little guilty. So games you like, but others don't. Maybe I'll say for Monopoly, I don't know if outdated is entirely a fair term, but I'll use that term anyway. I'll think of a better word later. Outdated games, loud games. You know, sometimes actually, here's one for me for Stonemaier Games. You know, I love our games, but I do feel a little guilty about suggesting, hey, why don't we play one of our games? Because I get an inkling that I get it. I have I'm always happy to play any of our games, but I'm very conscious and aware of other people not, you know, they have a wide variety of things they want to play, and they're not necessarily Stonemaier Games in my gaming group, or at least not necessarily all the time. And so I do feel a little guilty about saying, hey, why not a Stonemaier game tonight? So I might add that to my list. Trying to think if there's any guilty pleasure games with our partners, with Megan in my case. Are there any games that I feel guilty about suggesting to Megan? There probably is. I'll have to think a little bit more about that, because generally if I try not to suggest games for Megan that I know that she doesn't enjoy. Although at the same time, I shouldn't assume that she doesn't enjoy them. There's certain games that I think she doesn't enjoy, but her taste might evolve over time. You have to think if there's an element of guilt there. Chad says, I finally found a copy of the new Ra, amazing design in a small rules package. Do you find yourself being resistant from removing more and more rules to get a super small rule set with huge depth? Resistant? No, definitely not resistant. No, I love to streamline things. I love things. I mean, you could tell this from Tapestry. I love streamlined rules that lead to a vast gameplay experience. Emergent complexity, emergent narrative. I love that for those things to emerge from a simple streamlined rule set. Yeah, definitely. The one thing I don't resist is using text to explain complex concepts, or at least nuanced and thematic concepts on cards. or other components, opposed to just trying to limit it to icons. I talked about that a little bit on last week, where there seems to be a trend among Euro games to completely replace text with icons, and I think that can impede the experience as you're trying to decipher this weird combination of icons, and I think it can. I think it can limit the design a little bit. If you're limiting yourself to icons, then you're probably limiting some of the thematic ideas that you can come from. Now, I do say that, and I know that we have a game that we're working on that is primarily icons. It is by design, though. It was a very, very intentional choice to lead with mostly icons in that game for accessibility reasons. So I think there are circumstances where it's appropriate. But yeah, I don't love it as the default that I'm seeing in Euro games these days. Interesting. Scott says, guilty pleasure game, a basic solitaire card game with a standard card deck, because as a self-proclaimed gamer, it seems too simple. So games that seem too simple, and a solitaire game in particular. I feel I'm going to throw another one on the list that reminds me of digital games. For some reason, I generally feel guilty when I'm playing a digital game because it's my gaming time. And I'm like, okay, I could be sharing this with other people. I'm not validating this guilt, but it is why I feel guilty. I could be sharing this with other people, or I could be working on game design right now rather than I could be working on game design on my computer instead of staring at it, playing a game on my computer. So I do always feel a little guilty about playing them. But I love your comment also, Scott, about standard playing card games. I don't know if it quite fits into the guilty category for me, but that is a category of games that I rarely think of, even though I genuinely enjoy poker, hearts, spades, games like that. Yeah. Brian says, so this is a good way to say it. Games you don't want to share publicly, even though you actually enjoy them. So he says, due to the content, okay, colonization. And this isn't saying that Brian likes games with colonizations or likes that theme, but he is aware of the backlash that can arise from that, even though he enjoys the game. Like, let's throw Puerto Rico out there. Puerto Rico is a game that is the original game has some real problematic elements of colonization, and yet theme aside, is a really well-designed game. So I can see how you might feel a little guilty about talking about that. Theme IP, I can think of a game right off the top that comes to mind for that, and real-world issues with the designer or publisher. Well said, Brian. Yeah, I can totally think about that. Yeah, I'm going to make a note about that. Content, IP, and designer, publisher. It's really tough to separate those things. Sometimes you can't separate those things. Like going back and watching The Cosby Show at this point, right? It's tough to separate the humor of the show from someone who did a series of terrible things, who was tied very closely to that show. Yeah, I think that's sometimes you cannot separate those two things, but sometimes you can. Sometimes there's a game that you really enjoy, even though the theme or the designer or the publisher is problematic. Your inner child says, could the guilty pleasure tie into the emotion of guilt? Games where you don't know the rules or the play is so fast that people are prone to cheat. Sports without a referee. Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. Games. Yeah, I think maybe the thing that's resonating most with me here are games where you don't know the rules. Guilty pleasure games. Where you feel guilty. Oh, okay. Yeah. So an example of this would be is if you're sitting down for a game that is fairly difficult to learn, for example, and the other 3 or 4 people at the table know the game really well, I might feel a little guilty about impeding their experience of not just being able to jump into the game because I don't know the game. Awesome. You all are giving some amazing answers to this question, well beyond what I thought about this category. Thank you so much. Games where I don't know the rules. Let's see. Champion Faction says, shouldn't be a point of shame. Yeah, I like that. Guilty pleasure does not mean there should be shame, but I assume the intention is about games that are looked down upon in gaming or a large divergence from the norm. Yeah, I think that's the general idea of this category. It's just that I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty about pulling out my old copy of Scotland Yard I love that. I love that game. I really do. Yeah, I don't know. That's a random example. Here you go. Champion Faction says he actually likes Monopoly. When played with the correct rules, the game is not looked on favorably within the hobby, so it could be a guilty pleasure. Definitely. Yeah, even I have derided the game a little bit here. It really is not a knock against Monopoly at all. It's just not a game that I think to get to the table, given many of the alternatives that are available. Tony says, Poetry for Neanderthals is a guilty pleasure game. I've heard good things about this game. You need to get your teammates to guess the keyword on your card. You have to talk like a caveman, single syllables only, phrases like this thing from sky make fire. And he says it's hysterical. I can see that. Yeah, that kind of falls into these boisterous, sillier games. Even at Gamers Ranch, we played Sorry Sliders. Although even then, I didn't feel guilty about playing Sorry Sliders. It was a silly late night game to play, and we had a blast playing it. Tadej says guilty pleasure games are games with very colorful and beautiful looks, aesthetics to them. Just can't say no to them. Why do you feel guilty about those? I'm curious about that. Oh, Derek. Okay, this resonates with me with my guilty, my digital game thing. Derek says all games feel somewhat like a guilty pleasure to me, like I could or should be doing something productive. I understand that feeling. Chad says chicken. I love super thematic, deep games, which chicken is not. Many gamers would scoff at as its simplicity, but my life loves it. I love it too. Yeah, I love it too. It's definitely still on my shelf. Comes out from time to time. It's a beautiful custom dice game. Carol says about her chat on the mill. I had a conversation with Ambassador Jen in May about Euphoria. We're slowly making our way through the catalog. That's great to have a backlog of videos to fall back upon. I filmed, what did I film yesterday? Actually, I filmed a video that I've been thinking about for a while. I went through the Board Game Geek Top 100. Just filmed this yesterday, where I talked about how I kind of did a tiered ranking of how I feel about the games in the top 100. I have played 95 out of the 100 games currently in the top 100 on Board Game Geek. So it was a little bit of a longer video, but I only went into detail about the games that I will always play. I had a category of around 12 games on the BGG Top 100 that I will always play. Another video that I want to work on soon, we're talking about guilty pleasure games, is engine building games. I love engine building games. I love games with progression. And I haven't done a video about them in a while. I think it's been a few years since I did the last video. A lot of games have come out since then with excellent engine building. So that's on my mind too. That's my other question of the day. If you'd like to share your current favorite engine building game, or just an engine building game that you were excited to get to the table. And if you don't know what that means exactly, I've talked about progression. Generally, engine building games are games where decisions you make throughout the game make you better at doing the things the game is having you do, typically actions, on an ongoing basis throughout the game. Sometimes this means that you're improving your income. You're just getting more stuff round to round in the game. Sometimes it means that you have an upgraded version of an action. So you took a fairly weak version of an action early in the game. Later in the game, you're more powerful at that action. Any sense of progression throughout the game indicates engine building. So that is a topic that I'm going to talk about. Martin says maybe old-fashioned rather than outdated. I like that more. Old-fashioned. Yeah. Thank you. Jeff says Guillotine, maybe a guilty pleasure. I don't think I've actually played Guillotine, or it's been a long time since I have. I think I've played it once. Ian says, I feel guilty about making his wife play any game. She's not a gamer at all. Yeah, I can see that. Hopefully you never actually make her play the game, but maybe suggesting that you can feel a little guilty about that. Sam says, have you come across Peaks on Kickstarter? It's my first full design and thought it might be of interest as my design philosophy aligns very closely with Stonemeier's. Sam, I'm glad you mentioned it. I will check out Peaks. Make a note about Peaks on Kickstarter now. Congratulations on your first full design being published. That's very exciting. Didi says, on Monopoly and Guilty Pleasures, I get a kick out of playing rethemed versions of Monopoly, like Family Guy, Star Wars, but my fellow gamers and designers will never play with me. So you're immersed in the theme. In fact, we have a copy. You may have seen it on Instagram at times. We have a copy of the Lord of the Rings Monopoly that Megan has, I think, from years ago. It's on our shelf. I've never played it. I don't actually know if she's played it. But we should just play it sometime. Why not? I love the Lord of the Rings. I'd love to see if they did anything special to bring out the Lord of the Rings theme in this version of Monopoly. Luke says that Notting Hill used to be his guilty pleasure movie or film, but I found out that everyone loves it, so it's not a guilty pleasure anymore. I like that. Discovering that other people share the same guilty pleasures maybe makes them a little bit less guilty. Dawson says, I feel a little bit guilty suggesting Res Arcana or other games where knowing the cards or combos will heavily influence who wins the game, although I still want my friends to enjoy those types of games. That's interesting. Games where you know the game really well, you are very good at the game, you might feel guilty playing with someone who is very new to the game, where you have a huge advantage over that other person. I'm trying to think if I have any games like that. I mean, there are certainly games that I know better than other people because other people are learning games all the time. Same with me. But I typically use that as an opportunity to bring them into the game. I try not to use those things to my advantage in general. But I see what you're saying. I mean, sometimes it's tough not to just play better than someone who doesn't know the game at all, especially when it's a game about knowing the cards really well. And when there's, I think in Res Arcana, it's been a while, but I think there's some limited information where you don't have all the information that the other player has. So you can't necessarily break out of that advantage of experience. Aaron says the chess app is his guilty pleasure. Too easy to jump into a 2-minute game and another when I'd probably enjoy spending my time on something else more. I can see that. Steve says guilty pleasure games are his beefier games, something that can take 3 to 4 or 5 hours to play with higher player counts like Nemesis, Wonderlands War, and other games. That's interesting. So is that, what is the guilt there? Just because you're spending so much time on it? Is it because your gaming group typically doesn't play those longer games? Yeah, where does the guilt come from that for you? Carol says that her guilty pleasure games are sometimes Disney or Harry Potter themed, since some see those IPs and don't think they can be part of a solid game. That's interesting. I think games with IPs have come a long way. We're kind of in a golden age of games with IPs, intellectual properties associated with them. But I can still see there's that someone might hear, oh, it's a game about Disney princesses, and then you realize the game is awesome. In fact, Disney animated, I've heard great things about Disney animated. Villainous, amazing game. There's a game designed by designer Pam Walls coming out later this summer that I'm really excited about, and with a Disney theme. I can see what you're saying, Carol. Kevin says, I've had an obsession with tiny versions of games, and now that Gloomhaven has a tiny version, do you think that Scythe or Expeditions could have one like that? Kevin, it's a good question. I don't think so. It is not something that we're planning to do, but I am trying to be aware of table space and limited table space. Some games just require more space than others. I understand that Expeditions takes up a lot of space because the cards need to go between the location tiles, but it is on my mind in general. It's just not something that I think we don't have any plans for a tiny version of an existing game, I guess is the answer. Okay, Susanna's going to share a comment and question for her friend David C., who's in a meeting and can't join us. So her question from David C. says, I wanted to mention that Dave Beck, the designer, specifically thanked Jamey for inspiring him in the Distilled rulebook and ask his thoughts on the upcoming Luthier Kickstarter if he's seen the game yet. I have seen the box art for Luthier, but I don't know anything else about it. I think I heard that it is heavier than Distilled, which may take me out of the running for pursuing it. Still open to playing it at some point. But I really love Distilled. Distilled is, for a heavy and really well-designed game in terms of the theme and the mechanisms, it was not overwhelming to play, I guess, is a way of saying that. I played Distilled fairly recently. We had a glass of whiskey with it, so it felt like a casual game night, even for such a heavier game, and it flowed really well. I didn't know, or I forgot that Dave mentioned me in the Distilled rulebook. But Distilled was, I had a great time playing that recently. Did a video about it. I think last Friday maybe was when my Distilled video came out. Kevin says a guilty pleasure game for him is the Taco Bell game. That is an IP that I could see that being a guilty pleasure IP. Rocky says for him, the legendary Marvel games, because it's gotten so big that it's hard to teach. So his partner and him mostly play on their own with new expansions. I can see that. Hard to teach games, even though you're eager to play them. Nick says games that you can spend a lot of money on. Oh, okay, yeah. CCGs, yeah, collectible card games. Money sinks. Not that CCGs need to be money sinks. They don't have to be, but I can see that they are for some people. And Nick points out also, even games I spend a lot on organizing, sleeving, and upgrading components. I can definitely see that too. Martin says games that are aimed at kids, but he still enjoy, such as Animal Upon Animal or Rhino Hero. I'm right on the edge of guilty with those games. I can see what you're saying, but if like the collective atmosphere environment is, hey, let's play Animal Upon Animal, then I'm all in. I don't feel guilty about that at all. But I definitely can see what you're saying there. Beverly says Ezra and Nehemiah. I think this is for the engine building category. We're onto that part of it now. Yeah, I haven't played that one yet, but I'm curious about it. Jeff says Brothers Mirth debuted their new studio and chose Wormspan to be the first playthrough they filmed. I did see that. Yeah, I added that to our website. Very flattered. I didn't realize that was the first film in their new video, but I did see that popped up on my YouTube feed. Let's see. Valerie says for engine building, I need to start a new sticky note for engine building here. Valerie mentions besides Scythe is an engine building game. Really into Terraforming Mars right now. For online games, I like Satisfactory. So Terraforming Mars, but I can write TM because that holds up for Terraforming Mars and Terra Mystica. Alvin says, I fell off the game design train and even playing games, and I'm so sad. I'm sorry to hear about that, Alvin. I need to get back into it. I'm extremely sick right now. I'm really sorry to hear about that, Alvin. Maybe when I can walk again, I'll get back to my Photoshop. Just wanted to say hi because I missed so many of these. I'm really sorry that you are not doing well, Alvin. And I hope your recovery is going well and is maybe even faster than you expect it to be. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Ray says, although it may not be a direct engine building experience, making an efficient deck in Dune Imperium feels amazing, especially if you can draw lots of cards each turn. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting. I instinctively, I'm like, oh yeah, of course, Dune Imperium is an engine building game. And it's pretty close. Yeah, I would say it probably is. Deck building games and bag building games often are by default engine building games. You're improving your deck throughout the game. Dune Imperium is an interesting case in that because you aren't gaining that many cards and you don't see the cards you gain all that often, like maybe 2 to 3 times throughout the game. But I think it does classify right on the edge there as an engine building game. Tim says, I guess Monopoly is an engine building game. You do own, yeah, you're better at owning properties. It's more of a passive benefit as people land on those properties, but yeah, I think so. Chad mentioned Scythe and Star Wars Outer Rim as an engine builder. I feel super powerful towards the end of the game. Yeah, I can see that. Still only played that one once, but I did have a good time playing it. Yeah, you're improving your ship throughout the game. You're improving your character throughout the game. Totally. Champion Faction says, I relate to feeling guilty when playing games with his wife who wouldn't otherwise play. Like she may not suggest it. He says, she loves me and is a good sport to play with me, but I know she would otherwise be doing something else. That makes sense. Terraforming Mars again from Truman here. Classic engine builder, or modern classic engine building game. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down a little bit here. Sean says, guilty pleasure, The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31. I often end up feeling guilty after a session for picking on a player to divert attention from me. Oh, okay. Guilty pleasure. Yeah, I do feel guilty lying to my friends in a game. And so when you have to lying games, like I haven't played this one. I've played The Thing, but games like The Resistance. Yeah, I'm amazed that y'all have come up with so many different categories of feeling guilty in games. I'm really impressed by this. Okay, Steve clarified about his long games. He said, most of the games that are played with my immediate family, and I feel guilty, or are played with his immediate family, and I feel guilty taking an entire evening or afternoon and tying them up for more than a few hours. So longer game, how that is a bigger commitment. I can definitely see that. Derek says, Gizmos and Wingspan for engine building. Yep. Those are definitely 2 great engine building games. Julie mentions Wingspan as well, Terraforming Mars as well, along with Ark Nova and Everdell. Yeah. I love those picks. Yeah, thank you, Julie. Corell says, an example from today, comparable to the digital games. Today, I wanted to play a beefy solo game, Ezra and Nehemiah, and thus I had no time to play a party game with his children. They're on vacation right now, so I can see that being a little extra guilty there. Valerie mentioned, of course, Lorcana, solid for a trading card game. She was 100% on the skeptical train when hearing the theme, but turned out to be a really solid game. Chad mentions Marvel Champions as another guilty pleasure games because he purchased a lot of hero and scenario packs, probably more than he'll ever get through, but he feels so you feel guilty almost when you pull it out. You're like, oh, I have all this stuff that I haven't played. You know, I feel that about Glenmore 2. I still have this game that I talk about. I love Glenmore 2. I still have not made my way through all of the Chronicles. So games with so much stuff. I'll mention Glenmore as my example for that. Yeah. Joshua says, generally speaking, I feel guilty when I buy another game purely for solo play and his fiance says they're taking up too much room. I can see that. Yeah, you know, I can relate to that with shelf space in general. I do feel a little bit guilty. Engine building games from Ian. Fleet, the dice game. Wormspan, of course, Wormspan as well. Yeah, Wormspan and Fleet. It's interesting that Fleet, the dice game, I think is now more famous than the original Fleet game, which was one of the original Kickstarter games. Philippe says, I bought Rolling Realms a month ago and just received the email for Stonemaier Champions announcing the Rolling Realms Redux. Will I be missing out on something? No, Rolling Realms Redux, and I talk about it in the newsletter, is a new core set of Rolling Realms. So with Rolling Realms, you get 11 realms and all the stuff that you need to play the game. Rolling Realms Redux is also has the same core rules, exact rules as Rolling Realms. It also comes with the dice that you need to play the game and the resource cards, the markers, things like that. But it comes with 12 completely new realms. So if you want to essentially expand the copy of Rolling Realms that you already have with Rolling Realms Redux, you can do that. Or if someone discovers Rolling Realms through Rolling Realms Redux without having anything else for the game, they can do that. You can play with that out of the box as well. So no, definitely not missing out on anything. It's more stuff for Rolling Realms if you already have Rolling Realms. Wendy mentions Ganshan Clever can be a great little engine builder in a small box. Yeah, I like that pick, Wendy. And definitely a much smaller box. Ganshan Clever and all its many iterations. I see Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition as well, coming up from Luke here. Sean's popping in to say, I hope you have a good 4th of July. Yeah, it's 4th of July week here in the U.S. Ian needs recommendations. It's his birthday tomorrow. Happy birthday, Ian. And I love engine builders, roll and writes, worker placement games. Well, Fleet the Dice game is both of those things, engine builder and a roll and write, and worker placement games. A lot of worker placement games do have engine building. Let's see if there's any let's see if we can find a game that can fit all of Ian's categories. An engine building, roll and write, worker placement game. I don't know if there are any worker placement roll and write games, but maybe. Lots of worker placement games that are also engine builders. What's an example of that? Stonemaier Games, we have Euphoria, Viticulture, Pendulum, Charterstone. Those are all worker placement. I think I'm missing one in there somewhere. Those might be the 4. Yeah, I think the 4 worker placement games from Stonemaier Games. I do not classify Scythe as worker placement. I feel like I'm missing one though. Apiary is definitely a worker placement engine building game. Michael mentions Earth. Yeah, modern classic now. Earth engine building. You're definitely getting better and better as you play Earth, as you have more cards in play. Orleans. Orleans, Quacks, Clank. Those are all bag building, deck building, engine building game. Oh, Chad says, let's talk about other forms of media for a minute. Chad asked, did you finish Dark Matter? We did. Such a good show. I don't remember the book all that well, but I feel like the author added some things to the show that weren't in the book, and I thought they were really, really smart additions to the show. Highly recommend Dark Matter if you get the chance to watch it. Also, Wayward Pines by Blake Crouch, which I haven't read, is on Disney Plus. We are also now all the way up through, unless there was an episode this week, we're we're caught up on the Acolyte, which has gotten very poor user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, but I'm really enjoying it so far. I am really satisfied with the Acolyte so far. It's the new Star Wars show. We are really enjoying House of the Dragon. We're caught up on House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones show. We watched the movie Enough Said, a little bit of an older movie, Enough Said, with Julia Louis-Dreyfus and the guy from The Sopranos. I'm forgetting his name. Really good, kind of adult romantic comedy called Enough Said. We really enjoyed that. And we also watched the finale of Top Chef, the latest season of Top Chef. We hosted Megan's brother and sister-in-law, and I cooked dinner, or most of the dinner. They brought a nice salad, and I cooked the rest of the dinner on Friday night, and we had a good time eating some good food and watching the Top Chef finale. What else are we watching right now? We just started watching a new lunchtime show called Hacks. The show isn't new. It's new to us. It's about, so far it seems to be about comedians. And we also watched bits and pieces of John Mulaney's Everybody's in LA, which was live on Netflix a few months ago. Now it's just on Netflix. It's a weird show, but some of the clips are really, really funny. What are you all watching and enjoying these days? And I'm still reading, not quite done, but almost done reading the first book, The Serpent and the Wings of Night. Still really enjoying it. This is the book that's kind of the Hunger Games meets vampires, a little bit in the romantasy genre, but it does a lot more than that too. I don't think it's limited to that genre. I'm really enjoying that. Also, this past weekend, I'll just hit my quick topics right now, and then I'll focus on the comments. Had a good round of disc golf this past weekend. Or actually, not a good round. I had a fun round of disc golf. I did not play all that well. I had a great time going to the farmers market yesterday and this weekend too, in a couple days at Stonemaier Games, working a lot on design right now, product design, and a lot of development work on games and products that are in the works right now, where I'm playtesting. I'm going through playtesting feedback and data and talking to designers, or working through the feedback myself if I'm the designer of it. A lot of that in the works right now. Some exciting stuff in the works at Stonemaier Games. These are things that won't come out for a few years now. We're planning 2 to 3, maybe even 4 years out in the future at this point. But it's exciting to work on these future titles. And yeah, I think, I did a video this past weekend was with Ian. Ian, who he's on vacation right now, so he's not joining us, but he pops up in the comments. He's from the YouTube channel Where There's a Wills, There's a Way. And he joined me for a video about tile placement games. That was Sunday's video this past week. Yeah, I think those are all of my topics. So I'll just focus on, and I will remind you, in case you're joining me right now, Rolling Realms live play game 70 will happen today. Round 1 will happen today at 3 o'clock St. Louis time. You can print out, these are fan-designed homemade realms that I'm going to be playing through. So you can print these out. If you go to the Rolling Realms Facebook group, you can see the links for those realms. And if you, I think they're on Discord too, but if you're on Discord and not on Facebook, feel free to ping me in the Rolling Realms group on Discord, and I'll post it there as well. Pat is joining us from Melbourne, Australia today. He just arrived yesterday and is in a conversation with his daughter. She mentioned how much their friends love Wingspan. Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Thanks for sharing that, Pat. I got to play Waffle Time with Pat at Geekway a few months ago. Oh, Steve mentions White Castle as an engine builder. Yeah, great engine building game that I have also really been enjoying as well, Steve. Thanks for mentioning that. Oh, Eric mentioned Fantastic Factories. I love Fantastic Factories. Great pick there, Eric. I need to bring that one to the table more often. Maybe game night tonight. Luke says, I was just playing Expeditions. Any plans to make character companion minis to use as hero workers? We don't have plans to do that. I can see what you're saying, how they do kind of represent the heroes in the game. No, we don't have any plans to do that, but I'm happy with the golden meeples. But I can see why you would think of that. I appreciate the question. FG Bison says, feeling guilty at work today when I taught and let my work colleagues during lunch break play That's Not a Hat. I gave them quite a headache afterwards as they tried to memorize all of those gifts. That's fun. Yeah, I guess sometimes you can feel guilty after playing a game. Like I said, for games where you need to or are encouraged to lie to your friends, those I can feel guilty about afterwards. The Fox Experiment. The Fox Experiment is a bit of a roll and write game. That's true. You're not, yeah, you are rolling, you're writing, and it is worker placement. I think that actually fits all those categories that Ian asked about. Well done, Chad. I like that. Earth. James also mentioned Earth and Nar and Project L, two great engine building games there. George is joining us from Norway. What are you doing in Norway, George? You're not usually there. Anthony says, I'm not sure if it's been mentioned, but one of his guilty pleasures is buying any deluxe components, such as coins or figures to games, especially if I mainly play solo. So it's not necessarily the act of playing the game, but the act of enhancing the game. I will add that. So gaming accessories. Yeah. I can see that. I hear that sometimes from people where they mention how much they've spent on Scythe or the Wingspan brand, things like that. Yeah. Wendy says, kind of a guilty pleasure game is Survive Escape from Atlantis because of the brutality of it. When I teach it, I recommend embracing the savage brutality and not playing nice. It's more fun that way. So games with player elimination, you can feel a little bit guilty about being the person to take out another player in the game. I'll add the category of player elimination. Chad does mention about Dark Matter that the author Blake Crouch added a lot to the show, and he also agrees that he felt like it worked. I still prefer the book, but that's usually the way it goes. Yeah, the book is still great on its own. It's kind of one of those series where I think it's worth reading the book and watching the show because of the differences between them. Yeah, I highly recommend both. Hilder says they enjoy Top Chef as well. That's awesome. Found this season a lot of fun. I thought Kristen did a great job, or good job as a new host. I agree. I thought she did a fantastic job filling the shoes of Padma. Yeah, she was an amazing host. I really liked how she wears her emotions on her sleeve, especially in the first season. Kristen did, and she often there's a lot of compassion and love of food and cooking that I saw from her this season. Oh, chocolate of the day. Damon J's is lemon truffle. What is my chocolate of the day? I just opened up an XOXO chocolate bar that it's a 70% dark chocolate bar. It is delicious. I'm really enjoying it. So I think that'll be my chocolate of the day today. The Champion Faction says that I've heard so many of the poor reviews on Rotten Tomatoes for the Acolyte have come from users who are protesting some aspect of the show they don't like, such as how it fits into the overall Star Wars lore. Which I guess is their right to do that. But the show, and because the show is part of the greater lore, that's fair to say. But I don't think like a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes represents the quality of the Acolyte, in my opinion. Chris is watching The Mole on Netflix. It's a social deduction reality show with lots of escape room type situations. I've heard good things about the reboot of The Mole. The Mole's been around, for like 20 years at this point, but I've heard good things about the current version of it. I appreciate you mentioning that, Krista. Oh, Julie watched The Big Door Prize. That was one of our shows that we recently loved and really enjoyed. I'm really glad you enjoyed that, Julie. I'm looking forward to season 3. I'm hoping there is a season 3. Corey has a quick reminder that CharCon 2024 is in Charleston, West Virginia next week, and he's hoping to see you there. Corey is a delight, so if you have the chance to attend this convention, reach out to Corey and say hi and play a game with him. He really is a wonderful person that I've gotten to play some games with at Geekway to the West. Ryan mentioned Raising Robots as an engine builder. Raising Robots. That's made some appearances on some of my favorite lists over the last 6 to 8 months, I think. Philippe mentioned Furnace and Underwater Cities. Yeah, I like those picks as well. Underwater Cities is on my list of games I wish I could play a little bit more often. Chet says, have you ever liked a movie or show more than the novel it's based on? Great question. Good question for anyone to answer here. Lord of the Rings, I know that's hard to say, but I love the movies. In the Lord of the Rings movies. I actually like The Hobbit, the book, more than Hobbit, the movies. I don't think it needed to be 3 movies. But the Lord of the Rings movies, I think they do a wonderful job of showcasing the world, the characters. The pacing, I think, is great in the movies, whereas the pacing of the book, I am the type of person who skips over songs in books. And I can even skip over lengthy descriptions of things that go too far into the history of the place or what a place looks like. But on the big screen, I can just enjoy what it looks like. So yeah, Lord of the Rings comes to mind as one for me there, where I enjoyed the movies more than the books. Paul mentions Munchkin as his guilty pleasure game. He says you need to play with the right people. And sure, the gameplay loop is always the same, but he just loves it. I actually still have not played Munchkin, so I need to play that one sometime. George is loving the air quality of Norway. That's lovely. The disc golf, there's a disc golf tournament in Sweden recently, fairly close to Norway. That looked beautiful. It looked stunning. This tournament in Sweden. Interesting guilty pleasure here. Games such as Exit the Game that are one-time plays and have component destruction that can't be passed on. It feels wasteful to him because you can't pass on those games. I can see that. It's a tough design decision to include something that can only be used once, like in legacy games or one-time games. So yeah, I think one-time use games. I can understand that. Yeah, I probably felt that way too. Paul says, what do I think about season 3 of The Bear? What did you think? So I'm 2 episodes in, and episode 1, I really struggled with. I have to say I did not enjoy episode 1. I appreciate what they were going for. Episode 1 is essentially a 25-minute montage showing mostly footage that we've already seen from seasons 1 and 2. It shows how much this chef has had to go through to get to where he is today. It's almost justifying who he is today based on his past experiences. I get that. But we've already seen that in seasons 1 and 2. I kind of wish it had been just a 5-minute recap of what has happened so far, like catching you up on what's happened, and then had a real episode follow that instead of just a montage. And then I watched episode 2, which felt more like a real episode, very tense. I got through it. I mean, it's a tough show to watch. As well made as it is and well written as it is difficult for me to watch that show, despite me also appreciating and enjoying it. So that's where I am so far. I had to take a little break after episode 2 and to episode 3 sometime in the future when I'm ready to handle that level of stress. Yeah. Pat says a guilty pleasure game for him is Abandoned Ship. I love using it as an introduction to gaming for non-gamers. I haven't played that one, but I appreciate you sharing that one, Pat. Carol says she loves the movie more than the novel of Into the Wild. I like that. Yeah. V for Vendetta is Paul's pick for that. Ian, movie over book for Ian is Shawshank Redemption. Sean says the Lord of the Rings movies were back in the theaters. Did you go see them? I didn't go see them. No. But I have enjoyed seeing them on the big and the small screen over time. Oh, wow. Corey likes the Hobbit movies more than the Lord of the Rings movies. That is a hot take. But he hasn't read the books and didn't watch any of them until last year. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, I never want to take away from someone else's enjoyment or excitement. I'm glad you enjoy that, Corey. Carell would say the name of the rose would be his example of a movie that he enjoys more than the book. The story is great, but the book is unreasonably long. I mean, 6 pages to describe the entrance of a church. That's fair. That's very fair. Jaws. I didn't actually realize that Jaws was a book. So yeah, Jaws is one of Wendy's all-time favorite movies. She found herself rooting for the shark in the book. Characters were more likable in the movie. Rooting for the shark in the book. Oh, that's great. Princess Bride. I have heard that the Princess Bride book is great. I need to read that book. A friend keeps recommending that to me. Chad says, years ago, before I'd ever heard of Stonemaier Games, my brother asked for this weird game, Wingspan. Yesterday, I started a BGA game of the same with him and his 2 other brothers for the first time. That's great, Chad. Great that you all are able to connect on Board Game Geek with Wingspan. Sounds like Board Game Arena. I said Board Game Geek, Board Game Arena. It sounds like they're actually getting close on Scythe as well. So you might see that enter public beta in the near future. Beverly mentions Walk in the Woods movie. She likes the movie more than the source material, which is either a play or maybe there's a book for Walk in the Woods too. Guilty pleasure for Joe is a game that is not as flashy. We enjoyed some games of oh heck with a regular deck of playing cards. That's true. Yeah, some of these I can see that with a game isn't particularly flashy, but you end up having a great time with it. Tony says it's mind-blowing about the bear that Ebon Moss-Bachrach, who plays Richie, is going to be the new thing in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. He was excellent in Andor as well. Yeah, he is one of the best actors, I think, right now of playing with anger in different ways, anger and rage almost. You see it in the bear come out through shouting and curse words. You see it in Andor as kind of a quiet rage against the world, against the Empire in particular. And Fantastic Four, I think you'll get to play with that in new ways as well. I think he is a great pick to play the Thing in the new Fantastic Four movie. I think that might be my favorite casting decision they made. But I think the other cast members are great picks as well. Carol says that the bear is so good it can be very stressful. We binged the new season last weekend. It definitely left us wanting the next season already. The season feels a bit different than the others. Interesting. I'm curious how that evolves over the course of the season. And Beverly does clarify there is a book for Walk in the Woods. Brennan's joining us a little bit late, but that's okay. I would say Smash Up or New York Slice as guilty pleasures. Games I adore, but my game group doesn't like, so I rarely get to play them. Yeah, so games you like, but your group doesn't like. I think I have that category. Yeah, that makes total sense. I played Smash Up like once. I need to play that a little bit more. But I love New York Slice. Okay, Eric is talking about. So I know Eric. I was hesitant to say this, Eric. Now that I know that you're watching, because I know you enjoyed season 1 or episode 1 of season 3 a lot. So Eric says the Bear season 3 episode 1 was such a fun take of last season on that was hyper committed to showing, not telling. Totally fair. Absolutely. Personally thought we got more than just the recap with insights to each character's past actions we weren't exposed to before. So I love that first episode. And that is fair. There was some new footage or new perspectives on older footage for various characters. I think maybe the reason I struggled with it, Eric, was that I felt like I had to spend 25 minutes watching mostly old footage when I just wanted to see a quick recap and then the new footage. And so I kind of wish I wouldn't have minded knowing when I could have just seen the new stuff, because I felt like I had to watch the whole thing to avoid missing out on the new stuff. But meanwhile, I was just kind of watching. And also for me, the music too. The music, there was this ambient music that sounded like a song that was ready to end, but didn't end. It only ended at commercial breaks, and then it started up again. Almost this like trance-like music that went like on one more beat and then one more beat. It was a tough episode for me to watch, but I'm very glad that you enjoyed it. And I think for anyone who has that same impression as me, where they start to watch it, they're like, oh, how long is this going to go on? Well, it's going to go on the whole episode. And I don't think that the new insights added in the episode are all that important. So I think it is like a last season on type recap. I think it is okay to skip it if you want to, in my opinion. But Eric might disagree with that. Let's see. Austin says a little while ago you mentioned the possibility of getting added to a bi-weekly board game nights on Discord and Board Game Arena. How might we go requesting to be added to these? Austin, good question. It's posted on the Stonemaier Games Discord somewhere. I would say the best way, yeah, but it's not private in any way. It's anyone is welcome to join this bi-weekly game night. It's every other Wednesday, so not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday at 7 o'clock St. Louis time. Usually we start pretty promptly at 7, but sometimes we'll play like a filler game as people trickle in, and then we use Discord so that we can actually talk to each other in real time and sometimes see each other if you want to turn your camera on. But anyone's welcome. So I think the best way to do it is post in the Stonemaier Games Discord, and I will share the link to this other Discord that we use for the Board Game Arena game nights. And if I don't see it, you can tag me at Jamey Stegmaier in the Stonemaier Games Discord, so I can add it. I think there's a few different places where like the Play Together, looking for a game, join the Board Game Arena community. Oh yeah, there it is. Yeah, there's some places to do that on the Stonemaier Games Discord. Thank you for that question about that. Oh, Oviedo says something similar about how I said I felt there's certain sections of the Lord of the Rings books that I kind of skim or skip past that I love the movies for. And Oviedo says the same thing about the Game of Thrones books versus the show. The books were stuffed full of endless descriptions of clothes, banners, and crests, which actually ended up benefiting the show in the end because of that level of detail. It really brings the world to life, but it can be tough to read through those things sometimes. I haven't read the books, but I have heard that about the books. Chad said, how is Walter's belly filling out? Walter is our cat who has been for a while now over-licking his belly, and we thought it was just anxiety, and it might still be a little bit of that. But Walter hasn't seen Inside Out 2, so he might learn a little bit about anxiety if he watches that. But it turned out that I think it is an environmental allergy, and so he's on an allergy medicine that he really doesn't like, but it is really helping his hair grow back. His belly is looking much more full of his beautiful white hair at this point. FG Bison says, another guilty pleasure game is Primal the Awakening. He and his gaming group really enjoy it. Some people said those monster miniatures are not needed. So guilty for how much you invested in a game that maybe some people might perceive as overproduced, where you could have the experience of the game without spending that much on the production. I can see that. Definitely see that. Okay, Carol says the first episode has some key moments emphasized for later on in the bear, so just don't forget what you've seen. But it has so many moments. I'm glad to know that, Carol, but I wish those moments were specifically emphasized over the other moments. Yeah. The bear. Joe says guilty pleasure game for him would be a game that has a very long play time. Steve mentioned that earlier too. A game that you would not normally play, but spend an entire Saturday playing in a long epic game. You know, I can now relate to that we were saying that because it's not necessarily me feeling guilty about other people getting engaged in that, because usually I would only play a longer game with people who want to play a longer game, but rather the feeling that, oh, we could have done something else with this day. We could have played multiple games with this day. Instead, we have played this longer game. I think, though, I try to get in the mindset, and you can probably relate to this. Once I'm in that type of game, I'm in it. Like I don't want to be thinking about the other things I could be doing, because that will detract from my experience if I do that. I want to be fully focused on that experience. But long games make perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. I often only play long games once and don't return to them. Champion Faction says, I stopped watching Game of Thrones, the show, after the second season because I wasn't enjoying it despite having loved the books. I know I may be in the minority. I think that's okay. Yeah. Chad said, I'd love to shout out the artist Marie Bergeron. You might know of her work, but she illustrated Thunder Road Vendetta. Oh, yeah. Great art in that. It really captures the theme of that game. Such amazing artwork. Please consider her for future games. I appreciate the recommendation. Yeah. I love her work in Thunder Road Vendetta. Trent Reznor did the music score for the first episode of The Bear. Definitely gave me a sense of uneasiness. Probably their intention, but it did make it tough to watch. Like I turned off the sound at a certain point. Or no, I felt like I couldn't turn off. I wanted to turn off the sound, but I couldn't because every now and then there was dialogue. There's like 10 lines of dialogue in that episode, that entire episode. Uneasiness. If they were going for that, they got it. Definitely. Darren says, in Inside Out 2, I missed what her big secret was. But I've heard what it was. Was that after the movie, or did it miss something in the movie itself? I don't want to give anything away here. I'm not aware of a big secret in Inside Out 2. And we did stay through the credits. So not that I'm not aware of a big secret. Yeah. This has been a wonderful conversation. Essentially, we've already filmed the video now about guilty pleasure games, but I will probably still do a video at some point in the future because you have helped me think about this in a number of different categories. Thank you for your thoughts on movies, TV shows, and engine building games as well. And I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday for the next live chat, or if not before then, in the comments anywhere on this video, on our website, or on Instagram, where I'm very active, and the Facebook groups and Board Game Geek and Discord. Yeah. So yeah, have a great day, great week. Take care. Bye.